Today, we're joined by Theo, Lorenz, and Tanja Siems, so co-directors of the AA Interprofessional Studio at the Architectural Association in London. Their new book, People at Home in More Than One Discipline, distills over 15 years of experimental teaching and collaborative projects into a bold rethinking of how we teach, collaborate, and practice. At its core, the book introduces the figure of the people, of the person, someone at home in more than one discipline who navigates into multiple fields with fluency, unafraid to cross boundaries and unsettle hierarchies. In this conversation, we'll unpack what that means in practice, from the methods that developed in the studio to the projects, collaborations that show how architecture, performance, and philosophy can intersect to generate new forms of knowledge and creativity. Tanja, Theo, thank you very much for being with us today. I would like to Thank you very much. I would like to let our audience know that there's a very special discount that's available for them to purchase the book People, and with a very special 15% off and free shipping in Canada, USA, and Europe. So without further ado, let's start. Let's talk about the figure of the person. Your book crystallizes years of work at the AA Interprofessional Studio into the idea of the people, of the person, someone who's at home in more than one discipline. How does this figure change our understanding of what it means to practice, teach, and think creatively today?
It is a thing we come across all the time when we talk to people in the creative fields. And we ask, so what are you? Who are you? What are you doing? The answer is often, I am, for example, for myself, I'm Theo. I'm an architect slash painter slash chef, and so on and so forth. So slash people is a kind of accumulation of multiple personas in a way. It's like yourself, for example, Dima, you're as well, you're an architect slash journalist slash writer slash editor. And so I think it's a normal thing nowadays. And especially in the creative world, we move fluently between them, and it's not something which is neither nor, or is like a reduction of something. But everybody asks for this kind of multi-talent at the same time. But if you come to frameworks where people actually ask for grants or things like that, all of a sudden it's again separated disciplines. So for us, it was quite important to give a little bit of a framework to and methodologies to this already existing reality of slash in a way. So multiple personas in one entity already. It's quite important as well to be in more than one discipline in order to be able to collaborate. Because of the overlapping frequencies you have with others, you then can form networks and initiatives which otherwise would be long conversations and miscommunications across the very sharp divide of specialities. And it's often seen that if you're a specialist, you're good at one thing and nobody else can be as good as you. But actually, it's the opposite often, that if you're a specialist in more than one field, then you can form an ensemble with others. And because of that, you can give each other space and take leadership in different moments, and therefore get a momentum into it. Projects like as well we developed, like, you know, at the beginning with the EU.
I can't dwell on that. So it's not only the people, the human, it's the non-human, it's flora, fauna, everything. So we work with all the elements. When we started for the project, and we always said as well, it's not like the project, it's not the object, it should be like the process, it has to be transformative. So we had in the first year an EU grant. So we got some framework, we got some budget, and we did build the biggest building the AA have ever done in the shortest time. So it was in 3 months at the end, and we did it with non-architects. So they were fine artists, they were some came from philosophy, some were even in economics. So it's really like the kind of the discipline to challenge and to work out of your comfort zone. So with Jena it was 90 years of Bauhaus. So we were invited as a kind, let's say, the parallel universe, and because the AA is more than 180 years old, it was created by students. So like, of course, students who wanted to build, but as well, it created so many different disciplines inside the architectural framework. So we said now like to bring non-architects back to the architecture school. So that was quite interesting. So the framework was, let's say, a bit EU grant. Now you have to tick boxes like what can you apply, what you have to aim at. But it was really open because it was a choreography festival. It was in Jena. And for that times, we did know on the 1st of May, we needed a big structure. So we created then, let's say the planning was done as well by a fine arts person who is usually inside the studio working by himself. So being in a team and then working on totally other disciplines. So we were lucky really on the 1st of May, we could bring everything, some bits in hand luggage, some in a big van from London to Jena. And then we were the opening part of that event. But still it was a framework. Let's say for us, creative was still restricted because it was a EU grant. You had to fulfill some political issues, social issues at that time. So for the year after, we got a huge space in Covent Garden in London. It was great. It was really like rundown old,
disused building.
Disused building. So we created a whole festival. So that was really important to always bring other creative to us. We had different workshops, we had political talks, social talks, and always in the evening, great performances. So we were performing with New Movement Collective. We had David McAlmite singing. So even we created a different, I can show it as well. It's like small and you can read it in the book, but it's as well like different kind of structures. And at that year, we didn't have any money. So we needed all the kind of cut-off materials from wood, old fabric we could gather as well. So it was quite interesting. It was not low budget, it was no budget. But then we still created a similar great project, or even better, because we brought every network together and we had 2 weeks of really great performances and workshops. So that was really important for us. So like, it's good to have budget, but if you don't have budget, you can create your own environment, your own creative network as well.
And that's really because of this, everybody on this kind of network were participants from multiple disciplines. So photographer, architects in one person, or a philosopher, jewelry designer, psychologist. So it's like a very strange overlap often as well, where people changed careers and actually wanted to explore more things. But actually, at the beginning, maybe there was a thought I changed career, but actually what it was, I expand my career. And I think that's a quite important thing. What is as well the thing, if you talk with individuals which are still sitting in the kind of very separated disciplines or believe that is a strength, they don't so easily believe you that you're a professional in one or the other, or equally in both, or that it actually is an addition for each other, right? And not, you don't swap from one kind of, I'm not an architect and 5 minutes later I'm a chef, both is related. But if you just hypothetically speak about it, then it's often the way that people are skeptical and don't quite believe it. So a really important thing is to prove by evidence. And because as soon as you show that something has worked beyond what you usually create in the norm of the separate disciplines, so it's not just a theater piece you would see like in any given theater, or it's not just an architectural piece which could be created, that's evidence which kind of carries the next step forward. So as Tanja said, it's the slashes is not only the person or the slash people, it's in a way as well slash objects, and something we probably come to later. But I think in a way the book in itself is part of this evidence, because it's a collection of this 50 projects or more we have done so far. And because of the way of working, not because of the prefixed idea, all of them have been a success. They have not been predetermined of exactly what we want, but because of the addition of the different disciplines and the dynamic between them, something has emerged each time beyond the kind of outset at the beginning. And I think that is the main advantage of slash person, that you can fluidly move between the disciplines, but because of that, kind of embrace them and kind of bridge them.
So let's talk more about these methods of crossing boundaries, about becoming a slash person. In People, you present concrete methods that allow students and practitioners to cross disciplinary borders. Could you share one example that shows these methods unsettle hierarchies and generate outcomes that could never emerge within a single field?
Yeah, I mean, I start with that. In a way, it's a methodology we introduce first. And in a way, we come from this kind of 4 different kind of distinctions, which has this kind of origin in Latour's ways of thinking in actor network theory, away from an architectural or artistic approach from the a priori, so where you have your opus and you work towards this one genius strike and suffer in order to have no compromise whatsoever in it, towards something what we call out of the air. So in between, there's this kind of the compromised matter of fact towards the matter of concern, where you have like the step-by-step development of design of the design process. But the actual methodology we now apply is the out of thick air, which means it's not starting towards a final point. So even in all the other methods we described before, you still have this outlook. You always are driven by something to the big festival, which has a predetermined kind of framework. But actually something different, which is this initiative kind of approach, where you, as a kind of name somehow describes as well, out of thick air means you start with something which might be unsharp and have only contours, but you can see clear initiatives within it. It's driven by these initiatives, and it can be a small thing like a book, or it can be a painting, or just a moment where you sit together in a cafe. And this initiative drives then the next level in a completely open direction. So that means as well that the starting point is not becoming one reduced or compromised endpoint, but actually usually a multitude of different outputs. And every step in between has a real tangible after effect. So step by step, you develop things more beyond single opus into something which is inclusive, expansive, and mainly expanding, and create something you don't know at the beginning yourself. And therefore, each time you're surprised by your own project, but you don't compare it as well as to something which you have prefixed and wanted to have, but rather something that emerges out of the collaboration. The book itself is written that way. So on purpose, I mean, we sit here, represent a network of people, and I think that's quite important. All the slash people in here, these are the people who influenced us way before we even started the course in parts, and we started to create the studio together. So from Mirage to Portia to to Robin, of course, Graham and Albena, and David Green, who is obviously a legend here in the school. All this kind of people always influence it. So if we would have written from our own perspective, it would have been not true to the way what we actually want to achieve. And if you read the book, you will see that every article is co-written and completely indistinguishable who did write what. You can tell a little bit like what the conversation was in the way kind of maybe referencing works, or how easy it's written. If we have a behind the scene conversation, of course, it's very different to having a kind of a discourse about education. And so I think the book in itself, it's a proof of a concept as well, so, which was always very important to us.
But as well, our methodologies, they shouldn't be fixed. Also, it's not like fixed models. It's like kind of, you could say, even choreographed processes.
Yeah.
So maybe for that as a sample, I don't know if you can see it. You can see it in the book. It's a kind of performative structure as well, which was quite exciting because it was leftovers from Inflate we worked the first year with. So we said, do you have any leftovers, any cut-offs, so really tiny materials we can sort together? So it's a kind of, well, the element. And we all, at that time, I think a team of 12 students, which are participants, we always not say students, participants, we worked on it and even then created a structure which was a kind of hexagon, which could be deflated and inflated. So even if we would talk to an engineer, he would say, no, like as an inflatable structure, you'd need as less sawing as possible. But we needed a kind of performative element, which really extracts in seconds. So that you see in the book as well, and in the film. So we will show maybe the film later, or you can see it online as well. It was build structure was really engaging and an element to bring everything together. And that cycling bit, because we did that in the third year, it was now in 17 different cities in the world. So like it traveled to, let's say, a more commercial conference, economic, like new economies for creative people. So it was in our backdrop, but it was as well the kind of hugging our structure, and we had the discussion. So Theo and I were talking about how to bring without much money projects together. But then it traveled with us with 12 different universities from London to New York. So Theo and I had it in our hand luggage. So it was really in a tiny rucksack. We brought it there on the Museum of the City of New York with both of the mayors, the mayor from London, the mayor from New York. And it was as well the mediator. So it was not just the structure, it mediated the kind of dialogue, the conference. And the conference was about teaching today. So like, what is education pedagogies today? So it was really having something there, which we know because we know it for 10 years. And it helped us kind of to facilitate, even if it was an object, it was a kind of facilitate, mediating the kind of discussion as well.
But that is precisely what you asked at the beginning. How is something emerging which is maybe not sitting within one discipline? So with the engineers, Steve Webb, the beginning was like, well, usually you want to have big pillows and no seams and things like that. But the outlook from us was different. We wanted to have a performing element which could be choreographed with the dancers. So could, as you said, suffocate it, that it was moving, but as well, we needed to transport it. So completely different set of requirements all of a sudden created a structure which usually you wouldn't have started with. But once it was there, because it was as well crafted and hands-on by the students, and it became testable. So you were, like, again, proven by evidence. You had something in front of you, which all of a sudden you could put into different environments, into different networks, and therefore become a real actant within that kind of settings. And all of a sudden, we had other people asking us to hire or to have it borrowed because they had it as an interactive, reactive element to little sensors. So you came into a room, that thing blew up towards you, and they tested their sensors with it and their kind of thing because it was big and visible and room kind of filling as well. But it were quite a nice and interesting looking structure. So I think if you
it's actually it's interesting to see how these new objects, these objects acquire new meanings based on use, based on performance. They're not static artifacts anymore. They're expanding the role of architecture and design beyond what their primary use was to begin with.
I mean, that's definitely one of the exciting things for us as well. How and that's true as well, not only for the objects, but as well the people using it. So there's as well the reaction in the other direction as well. So the performers all of a sudden start being maybe at the beginning irritated by it, but then starting to test it and starting to challenge it and so on and so forth. And I think there's a whole kind of cycle of development. And after the fact, we still have them in testing as well.
They're here in our studio.
One in the archive, others are, you start being casted around, and others being kind of illuminated from the inside or being video mapped on. And so it's a kind of a living thing. It's a piece.
It's exactly. And well, the way that you tell these stories, these case studies throughout the book, you use a lot of narrative to bring these case studies to tell where architecture engaged with performance, where it engaged with philosophy and other practices. In your opinion, which case best illustrate the potential and the challenges of being at home across disciplines?
I think there is all of them in a way. That's the interesting thing about it as well, because each time something emerges out of it which is not completely predetermined. I think you being in Spain at the moment, for example, Matadero Madrid, we had a whole series of events, 4 in total, which each time surprised us on all the elements of the location, how it changed over time, because we were there before the opening, for the opening, and twice after. And it's interesting how if you integrate into a network, and in that case as well, a kind of sociological and kind of local network of maybe as well local politics, how you come with the different disciplines. And because of that, you're able to create a common ground. And because you're kind of coming as a neutral and not just from one fixed site, and not coming from one fixed discipline means as well that you're not coming from one kind of predetermined opinion or approach to, for example, reuse of a building or the redevelopment of an area. So if we would have come as an architect group and say we do a workshop here, it would be, oh, you gentrify us. But if you come with culture, but it's culture which as well invites local farmers, for example, to as part of their workshops to show produce and to actually start redeveloping a business for themselves after the old slaughterhouse area was gone. It was something which really triggered an after effect, and the kind of what you talk about of the slash people is still going on, and we're not even part of it directly anymore. It's just a fact that which is rolling on. There were people who did a cooking event with us together, local restaurants, and then opened the restaurant on site, which and we had the market there, which, as far as we know, is still existing today as a weekly kind of produce market from local farmers who before were quite against, or not surprisingly, against this kind of influx of all of a sudden city people coming into their own kind of area and they losing their jobs maybe. But if you would have come in on the purpose of like, we correct this issue here, then nothing would have worked. But if you come in and just create a common ground, a platform for conversation, all of a sudden you have a conversation going, which is not depending on us in entirety. So,
but it's that. So we have 3 years, I think, we went to Matadero.
With events, yeah.
So I don't know if you can see it, the bluish one. So as well, like we bring structures which would work. Yeah, you can hold it. And as well, because of that one. No.
Which one?
That one. Yeah. So we use the structure, the scaffold from Matadero. No, in the book. And we brought the kind of material we could, even like the wooden structures, everything was hanging in the kind of scaffolding. And so we could really arrange it when we had the performance was a different element. Even it was this kind of like the square and then connecting through kind of paper and wood structure, but as well like having being the framework for the market, having workshops on it. And as well, even the paper was a kind of newspaper. So like it was a kind of triangle. So we had a handout where we explained everything we wanted to do for the festival. But the middle bit was the inside. So people could roll it up and created their own triangle, which was afterwards a canopy. So it was as well like, so that's why it was important as well to have the workshops beforehand. And then seeing it afterwards in the performance, like what you created with local people, and was school kids, even younger than school, like from kindergarten up to elderly people, which are from really local people, which enjoyed the workshops and said, okay, now it's our community. And we said, it's your community. We only bring you together as a network again. And they really enjoyed it because we had as well performances, kind of what was like tango as well. So like our dancers did workshops as well with different kind of ages. And so it was always as well informed. So we had some of them even performed afterwards with us in the evening. So that's quite important. That what we said with the festival, it's always important to have workshops beforehand, discussions as well, and then bring it back to the performative element in the evening as well. And the showcase, for us.
And it's as well, we came back several times because as well we could see that we locked into networks and we could still expand them further. So the last time we were there, for example, I don't know, was it last time, but we collaborate then with Benedetta Tayabu and her team and like a workshop group of students from her and they created or co-created other structures alongside ours. And therefore, is this we answered in the first question as well. This it's a shared ownership by default immediately in that way, and more people can actually participate in that way. The dance groups we had involved were as well from local dancers who were never danced before, were just part of the workshop, to extremely professional dancers from the area, and some of the best we've ever worked with. And that kind of link all of a sudden creates a dynamic which is quite interesting.
Well,
So
yes, no, but I mean, seeing this multidisciplinarity becoming more and more not an expert in a specific field, but rather connecting multiple disciplines together brings me to ask you, what you hope that /people, how can we become /persons, no, and our actual day-to-day life outside of academia, to the general public, like what's your hope in terms of rethinking how we collaborate and make meaning about our knowledge today?
Yeah. Well, as we said before, in a way, we all are /people already, and most of us are in one or the other field. I think it is what we hope is that we can create a framework for it, where people we give them evidence, and we give them in a way as well confidence with a book like this, because obviously you need to start somewhere, right? And I think that is one of the main things. I think it's as well being involved in so many different situations, and if you have this overlaps, you can be more effective, and you're not kind of in a win or fail position either, because you're within a set of relations that actually allows you to reach different possibilities, and you might succeed in an area where you actually didn't expect to succeed, and you might the things which you a priori thought are the thing you have to do might become not so relevant anymore. I think this give and take is something which pretty much any other business does, really, in order they have to build multiple kind of expertise at the same time, in order not to be completely dependent on one skill. It's quite interesting that we have the opposite discussion sometimes with culture, that you say, like, you have to specialize, otherwise you don't survive. And along comes AI, and all of a sudden, one or the other specialty might be gone. In our case, AI would be another partner in the slashes, or in the networks. It's transformative again. So I think it's more a change of mind than a change of reality. I think it's like an acceptance of systems and frameworks around us, that this is actually a feasible way forward. And I hope we can deliver some proof through the book of that, and through the conversations with these fantastic thinkers we have with us in the publication.
But as well, important is always like shared ownership and create agencies. So like, not to bring people together, but I had two case studies, because the moving stone maybe was already on the topic before, but it makes sense maybe as well. I don't know, again, you can see it, or you see it in the book. It was as well like, we started, it's called Moving Stones. So we started with a tiny rock, brought even from Korea. So like one of our students was from Korea, like coming from fine art. And then we built around, the first step was building kind of pendulums, and we brought it to Sardinia, on even like an island next to Sardinia, so really tiny island, in a thunderstorm, solar eclipse, and something else.
Was rain.
And rainy, but it was as well like, so we had this like, let's say, the tiny facilitator wrapped in a framework, and then we said as well with the audience was just like us filming it, because we said it would be a filming event. But then as well, the local people were interested, so they saw really like we spread it around. So there was always a pendulum. They said, "Oh, that's a great art piece," but it was just like three of them, no, like spinning around. Then it went to Ibiza, so another island. And it grew already. So it was a different kind of framework. And then at the end, as you could see, 9 months later, it came to Hackney. So like a huge structure, but you have the pendulum in there. So it was like, that's as well the kind of, you start with a small project, and it can grow over the time. No? It can grow with the MA is 1 year, and then MFA 18 months, so like 1.5 years. And it's like, for us, it's important. You create something, and it's not like the next event. It's like it's gone, and it's I recreate, like not recreate. It's just like forming in different ways. And it could have been the opposite. We could have said, okay, huge structure, and then it goes down to the small scale. So that is important as well.
Yeah.
So like even going back and forth in the scale as a structure, but it's the same as well for the / people. So like not everybody thinks he can't or she can't change anything because we're so tiny, but in the kind of network, in the framework, we can create things. And on the same with the political issue, that was on that, like from your question. Last year we were in Istanbul, so we had a great project. We
Hope Actar.
Hope Actar. But like not knowing that the political framework changed immediately. So we had a really great event. It was inside, like now we're sitting inside our studio, was only thought about that, about creating like nice discussions and everything. But then we were in the center of Istanbul, around us chaos because of whatever, military came in and everything. So we created with our event a safe space. So everybody, some were even running, protesters running away, running into our space. And we had the best discussion, dialogue, like with us being not coming from London, but having many disciplines, many different people from different cultures, different languages. And it was a kind of the common ground at the end. So we didn't we had like, it was live music, it was performance. So we had a lot of dancers. It was like nice animations. So it was really like a space which could have been just like a theater and having like staging something, but at the end it was really political. So everybody who was there felt safe to discuss political, social important issues. And that was really like for us, we were all like, flattened.
But the interesting thing is, of course, I mean, the briefs for the year or for the projects, we often start from philosophical or political kind of discourses. Urgent topics we have at any given point. Last year, Baldwin's 100th birthday would have been celebrated, and he of course lived in Istanbul, and he did write work there in order to be safe and write amazing work about the US, but being away from home. So for us, that was kind of the starting point in the discourse of this whole, like how you find your own safe space and so on. And then because of the very situation of the moment, it was exactly that. And this kind of serendipitical kind of course, tragic at the same time, but moments where like the sun eclipse, all of a sudden everything starts aligning, happens within this networks and this way of working quite a lot as well. And so, this in more smaller or bigger kind of ways it works often, and it doesn't always have to be so tragic in a way, right? But it's like, but the moment when all of a sudden everything comes together in one point, in one way of discussing things, and in a moment where you realize it has worked. I mean, we describe in the book quite a lot of these situations where we had this first event in Covent Garden where, David McAlmond was singing, and after weeks of stress of building up the whole kind of network, everybody found this calm point, and that was more like this internal kind of collapse into a safe space and so on. So I think these are the kind of other outcomes which you can't plan in a meaningful way. They would otherwise just become activist. And
or like
in this way, and in this way they become active, and that's really quite fascinating for us, that it actually always works way beyond our expectations.
I love this. There's a word play that you've made between being activist and being active, and the way that, especially with the example that you gave of the Korean stone that was placed in various locations, how it changed the aspect, and it kept on changing and adapting to its environment. And this is exactly what I think, because me being a slash person, also like everyone here is I can attest that really the environment affects the way that we become slashes in life. I mean, coming from Beirut, having lived in Paris, now in Barcelona, all of these environmental things that we do not control, this invisible strata in our environment, which is political, historical, cultural, keeps on plugging in new information within our own identity, which I think is indispensable today to become an active and not activist part of society.
Yeah. And I think the whole chapter, this protest politics and performance, with the example of Portia and Robin and our kind of series of that as well, shows us really quite as well. And it's for us as well always important to put this mirror out there as well. So not only our own experience, but as well to our networks then. Yeah. So to have it reflected to you, if what you do is not just kind of accidental, but actually has system to it as well. And with Portia's background in Verbatim theater, for example, you had something where you can compare it to existing systems and so on. And I believe all the articles are doing something like that. You know, with Albena, we really go through the difference of educational principles and why this kind of move away from the individual genius. With Graham Harman, obviously, the kind of relation to objects. And Mirage, like where it comes from as a creativity, as a beginning point. And with of course, like where are the spaces of opportunity? Because the stone might have stayed a stone if not Stefano Raboli would have said, like, you come to Mangiavace. Like it's a weird space, but it might be challenging you. And so I think this is really important always to have this mirrors to the outside all the time as well. And because of that, develop ideas, not in a static and kind of self-reflective or self-gazing way always, but as something which is you test against, like in any kind of experiment, you should you have your own experiments, and but then you have kind of comparative studies where you kind of are able to push it towards. And we hope that the book gives for others now other comparative studies they can maybe work with as well, because you can't repeat them, but you can live in the same kind of attitude, and you can. We hope with the kind of behind the scenes, we have a little bit of anecdotal kind of things, and with the kind of compassion article is like the basis of having this active contribution, and yeah, with discussions like with Graham, it brings us back all the way to design and objects and architecture, and so that we actually know as well the agency of objects that can actually change as well how we look at architecture. And I think these are the things we're really key. And it's really interesting how the book is for ourselves a tool now as well, like, as for reflection. So it's not only something we put out there as a vanity project, but it's something which it needed summary in order to lock the evidence at some point as well. Yeah.
It's even interesting because if we talk about the book and the chapters, so like the chapters are easy, the 8 chapters, but as well, because we talked about our partners. So the last chapter is as well like it's a thank you list, but it's as well like it has so many potentials already with our partners we worked with, and we still know them. No? So some like we did meet 18 years ago, and now they ask us, "Are you coming back?" But Benedetta wants to do something now. No? If we do a book launch in Barcelona, we could do a nice banquet dinner, like to discuss things in Barcelona as well. So that's really good. It's not just saying. Like they're as well our mentors. So it's not only partners, some even sponsored us. So we know it's like, it's as well with budget. It's always, you create the network from your partners and they trust you so you can come back anytime. No? Mother Deo as well, they still invite us. No? Now 20 years later, they say, are you not coming back? And we said, but next year maybe. We're in Oslo next year. Yeah. So, but it's great. So it's like they trust us and we trust them. So it's like always.
And that's the interesting thing as well, because of this kind of dialogues that was like this year's partner, the Federal Biennale in Norway. They come from choreography and architecture, and of course there's a very clear overlap. But then as well with the institute in the Kunstakademi in Oslo, is the interest of how they can work with it. And all of a sudden, we were there only a couple of days, and the network kind of sprouted immediately in all directions, and it was. So if anybody's in Norway next year, in June, we're in Tjomme as part of the Federal Biennale, or they're not yet
The end of the world in a positive sense. That's how they call the space.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to say to our audience that the Q&A section is open. If anyone has any comment or question about this conversation while we keep on talking about this very interesting point. Regarding the partners and the collaborators, I mean, you create to yourself this network of people, collaborators, partner that come back, as you're saying, after years, maybe touch base again, and you find this common point on which you start developing these common practices, these experimental works that you develop. But I think it's it's very interesting to see how these partners, these collaborators per se, actually contributed to the development of this idea of these researchers in the future on which you touch base again. So because we create ourselves this network of partners, collaborators, mentors, colleagues, we keep on alimenting ourselves actually with these potential experimental works, and hopefully the future of how all the disciplines should be, which slashes disciplines, not fixed boxes in which we should fit, as you very clearly stated at the beginning of the conversation, that now, for example, I mean, just yesterday I was looking at the list of classes that an architecture school offers, and you have within architecture, you have architectural theory, you have urbanism, you have landscape. It is so sectioned that I felt lost, because at that point I think that we all do research in a specific topic, but this specific topic is so interdisciplinary that we cannot limit ourselves anymore to just one title, one topic.
Yeah.
And Slash People basically invites us to think about our discipline as architects, or other disciplines as well, that creativity basically, it thrives not in silos anymore, but it thrives in all these spaces that are in between these silos, which is, I mean, stories that remind us how architecture is never just about the buildings. It's just about everything that's around it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's a bit like recipes. In the old time, it's even like on that book, it says recipes. It makes it easier. So it's not like saying, it's a kind of manifesto, pamphlet. You have to work like that. It's like, it should be inspiring you.
It's just ingredient in a way. Like, and but it's as well, it's, and I think it's to cycle all the way back to the very first question. There's a huge difference for us between a Slash person and the omni dilettante. Somebody who's seen, like, I can do anything, like, and you're in the end you're a dilettante in everything. And I think that's not at all the case. You work professionally in all those kind of things. And there are areas where you might only have semi kind of knowledge, but like in an ensemble work, you give space, you have overlaps, you understand enough that you can sound together in a way as well. And I think that is an important distinction as well, that of course we depend still on some deep knowledge of others and expertise, but that expertise obviously has a different way of shining over if you have this kind of overlapping frequencies. It's one of the reasons why we call it, well, interprofessional studio. It's a term from, we explained that in the book as well, from medicine, where you work as an expert with somebody else from a different discipline, but that person does, for example, the knee operation, even though it's an eye doctor, but you bring he brings the sensibility of that careful work into something which might otherwise crack bones, and vice versa. I mean, I'm not from medicine background. I describe it just that way. But the supervision of the expert is there, but the kind of shift away from the static best practice and new sensibilities, and therefore an expansion of both knowledge is coming because of that overlap.
But then as well, like in the studio, we always said, the teacher and the student, they swap as well, because like we as teachers, educators, we learn from our students. So it's like always like shift, like every day. No? Like today we just rearranged it. So we had a long table discussing interesting things, and we learned a lot. So like we were really like, our heads are everywhere now. And and that shows even in a seminar series. And we invited our partners from Oslo. So we had a great discussion. So it was a kind of, it's a the right and interesting overlap. So it's like not always like everybody, what I always say, self-referential. So it's like then it would be always the same. You cook your own soup all the time. So it was really nice. And as well, the students are here as well from Oslo at the moment. So they were excited from our series because it was really like a theory workshop, which could be really dry. But we had a performance just now before we started our interview, because then they showed what they like the future project could be, but it was performative. No, there were projections, there were models, there were objects, and now they're outside doing a debrief in London, and enjoying their time here now in the big city.
I think as well, that's an interesting maybe last point for the networks as well, these layers of networks, like the layers of the student networks, which come from different disciplines. But of course, our colleagues like Tom and you know, everybody here from the team, which bring levels of expertise we need in order to be professional, right, as well. But in the interplay between all those things, it becomes something which is not the static from before. But you need expertise as well in order to teach one another. And I think that is something we have, fortunately, on multiple levels from students, which bring sometimes completely new and unexpected disciplines to us. Jewelry design, we would have never kind of just like, oh yeah, we need jewelry design. But it brings a different sensibility, for example, and so on, of course. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tanja and Theo, for this very insightful conversation. There will be, for anyone interested, a launch in November, right? About slash people at the AA, the Architectural Association in London, correct?
In the book, in the AA bookshop, the famous AA bookshop has the launch.
Yeah, 5th of November.
5th of November.
Wednesday, 5th of November.
And several of the authors will be there. So we're going to, make it slightly performative as well. So we don't know quite yet how we do it, but it's going to be not normal.
That's great. It will reflect all the research that has been put into slash people. And for anyone interested, you can purchase the book on Actar Publishers, and you can get all the information on urbannext.net. You can watch this podcast again, listen to it, and get the latest insights from Theo and Tanja on urbannext.net. So that was it. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. It was a pleasure discussing interdisciplinarity with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.